As the world around us continues to change, Florida Blue remains focused on our commitment to help keep Florida at its healthiest. With Medicare Advantage HMO plans that received Medicare's highest rating, 5 out of 5 stars. And you can switch today. No need to wait for the annual enrollment period. So call or visit online now. It starts with the benefit of $0 monthly plan premiums. But staying healthy is now more important than ever. So Florida Blue Medicare's 5 stars go even further. With enhanced benefits like $0 outpatient mental health services, $0 primary care telehealth available 24/7, 90-day prescription supply by mail, and free support from neighborhood nurses, all part of our 5-star commitment to you. So call 866-308-6110 and get the 5-star rated Medicare HMO plan that's right for you. Our experts are standing by. Call and switch today.
We are so excited to bring back the segment, The Blue Seat, sponsored by Florida Blue. And I hope you had a great summer, but we are excited about our guest today. For the segment of The Blue Seat, we have no other than Dr. Shawn Woodin, President and CEO of Southern Scholarship Foundation, where he has served since 2016. And Shawn is joining us with this incredible subject matter for this segment, and it's ensuring diversity within your organization. Again, we want to give a shout out to Florida Blue for sponsoring the Blue Seat. Without their support, the segment would not be possible. So we want to thank them as well. Shawn, I really want to brag about you just for a little bit, if you don't mind, just a little bit of background.
Please.
So although you've served for since 2016, at the Southern Scholarship Foundation, I did a little digging and noticed that you were interim executive director and national director for the Community Colleges of International Development, which is incredible. I can imagine the reach that you had with that mission. But you also worked as an administrator of the health program in Kenya. And I think that is amazing as well, too. So you do your work at Kenya, and that was through the Indiana University School of Medicine. And then I just noticed some of the wonderful things outside of the office. I hope you have a brother, Shawn. Hook me up, because you like to cook. And I think that's always a great attractive trait. But you like to cook, reading contemporary fiction, and then keeping up with the news is also some of the things that you enjoy doing when you have time off. And I don't know how you could possibly have downtime, Shawn. How do you do it?
Well, I try and squeeze it in. I believe in a work-life balance, and so I really push my team to balance their lives that way, and I try and do that as well. I also have a secret, which is that I have a hammock in what should be my dining room. So it makes it really easy to relax when I want to.
Very nice. Well, that's a little cheating way of doing it. I may have to take you up on that tip. That's a really good one. But again, Shawn, welcome to the Blue Seat, and this is a really great deep dive conversation. And thanks for being so open and transparent about sharing how your organization, how Southern Scholarship ensures diversity within its organization. But before we even go into that topic, tell us a little bit more about Southern Scholarship Foundation. What is the mission about the organization?
Sure, thank you. So it's great to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to share about Southern Scholarship Foundation. So through rent-free housing and cooperative living, Southern Scholarship Foundation supports students who lack financial resources, demonstrate excellent academic merit, and exemplify good character to attend institutes of higher education. So that includes our state colleges, formerly called community colleges, and also public universities. Our geographic reach is that we have 26 scholarship houses around the state. On average, 17 residents per house. We have one scholarship house on the campus of Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers. We have 9 houses in Gainesville serving University of Florida and Santa Fe College students, and then 16 here in Tallahassee serving students for Florida A&M University, Tallahassee Community College, and Florida State University.
Fantastic. And where are the houses? Let's just, if we look at Tallahassee, where are the houses typically located?
So our houses are on or near campus. So the houses that serve FAMU students are literally on campus, on the FAMU campus. So our residents can walk or take the Venom bus line from their houses to the classrooms and back. So it's really convenient for them to be right on campus. The rest of our houses that serve primarily FSU and TCC students are pretty much across the street from the FSU campus. We have 10 houses along Stadium Drive. We have 2 houses on Jefferson Street, and we have 1 house on High Road. So other than the High Road house, the rest are literally on or across the street from campuses.
Okay. Yeah, and typically in a non-COVID year, how many students would you say that you would house in Tallahassee?
In Tallahassee, about 290 students in total in all of our houses.
That's incredible. That's fantastic. Well, thank you. You know, I'm just curious too, because I've had a lot of great information shared with me about Southern Scholarship Foundation. Even before I was in this role with Annie, I've heard about the great work that you do, but even more recently impressed with the diversity that exists on your board, within your staff. And I know it just trickles down, of course, to who's in the house as well. So as a leader of an organization that serves a very diverse population, how do you ensure diversity among your staff?
So when looking at staff, I mean, there's a lot of considerations that go into the hiring process. One is just making sure that we're reaching out and using the tools available to us to put the position in front of a wide audience. You know, and so we use LinkedIn or Indeed, some of those more common methods of outreach, but also sending it out to local partners. The one used Indy's job board. We used UPHS and their network. We tried to use the Chamber of Commerce portal as well. So we wanted to make sure that it was getting out to organizations with a broad reach. And so, you know, and so that brings in applicants then that reflect the community. And then we look at, okay, what are they bringing in, you know, in terms of skill and knowledge, of course, for the specific position. But also how can that person's perspective enhance the broad view that we have as a team?
Oh, that's fantastic. So would you say that it's a strategic approach in how you ensure that diversity? Is there something else outside of the initial hiring or job posting that internally that y'all look at?
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly strategic. And, you know, back when I was doing my doctorate, one of the things that we learned, sort of one of the tenets that we learned when looking at how to build a team was to build a team that is unlike yourself. And me, I'm a middle-aged white man and cisgender. So, you know, I'm sort of as straight and narrow as they come, but that is not the team that I want to build. The broader the team, and the more perspectives we have on the team, I feel leads to better decision-making on the whole as the organization. And that's why I look, when I'm hiring, to diversify.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and how has that perspective, how has that transitioned to building a diverse team with your board?
So the board recruitment process is, you know, it's sort of a separate process to deal with. Our board really likes to identify people that they can bring in, again, to diversify perspectives. You know, from the board perspective and accountability and governance, obviously there's a strong skill set there. So we do have to identify, you know, what are those skills or that knowledge that, that as a board they need for the accountability piece. And also looking at how can they bring in different perspectives. You know, ideally, we would have a board that's that has a lot of alumni that represent the locations where we have houses, that represent a good broad racial and ethnic mix that would reflect the population of students that we serve. But I think both staff and board diversity is a work in progress. There's not an end in sight. It's a work in progress and needs attention when those opportunities come up during the year.
Yeah, and diversity too, and having that conversation with other organizations. You know, it's almost like it's all automatically either embedded in your culture or in most recent, looking at the past year and a half in terms of, racial injustices, it's something that has enlightened organizations where they're seeing a need for it. But with Southern Scholarship Foundation, it almost seems like it's been part of the founding of the organization. I was looking at your impact report, and you do account for the diversity within who's in the house. How do you have any programs to help students acclimate to living in the environment and the houses that you provide, considering they're so diverse with who you serve? Are there programs to help with facilitating that?
Yeah, and that, I mean, so when we have new residents move in, they've moved in a couple of days prior to the returning residents in the house so that they can get their bearings and settle in. And our house managers are there to welcome them, to show them to their room, to give them a tour of the house and explain a little bit about how the house works. But it's our returning students who reach out to the new students and help them understand the processes in the house. But it's also the environment that is created within each house. Our houses are really like homes. I mean, 17 people is a lot of people under one roof for sure. But when you walk into the front door, you walk into the living room of a house, and there's typically 3 very soft, comfortable couches right there, and a large screen TV on the wall. And there's throw pillows around in some of the houses. So it feels like a home walking in the door. And then it is a home. Because after the first week of classes, the cooperative living piece really kicks in for the whole semester, which is sharing in the cooking, sharing in the cleaning, making decisions on the whole, and picking up roles to help the house as it needs to operate. So our residents cook meals for each other Monday through Thursday nights, and they share those meals together, again, in non-COVID times when they can do so without the mask on. But cooking the meals for each other and then sharing those meals is a time to sort of put away the work of the day, and just sit and get to know each other and talk and joke and look at videos on their phones and just share what they like with each other and learn more about each other. It's also the cooking, because whoever's cooking will want to cook, if they know how to cook, want to cook the foods that are familiar to them and share them as a point of pride with their housemates. And I hear all the time, oh, I never would have tried Haitian food if this student hadn't been in my house, or I never would have tried, the food from Mexico or wherever if this student had been in cooking. So there's always that sharing that goes on, and I think our residents just become part of the community almost within the first couple of weeks.
That's incredible. What a great, like you said, it's already a naturally built-in community just because of the environment that they're placed in with living there. So that's incredible. I'm curious, what challenges, if any, has Southern Scholarship Foundation faced with embracing DEI within the organization?
So that's an interesting question. And it's one that we're wrestling with now on a strategic and a policy level, because when our foundation started in 1955, it started and continues to have houses that are for people who identify as male and houses for people who identify as female. And that's been our operating model for 66 years. But in that time frame, the definitions of gender have changed. And there are students now who identify as non-binary or transgender students. People in transition also are residing in our houses. So how does an organization that has traditionally used the binary definition of gender adapt its housing model to a new society where there's multiple definitions of gender? And that's not an easy question to answer. So, at this point, if a student identifies as non-binary, we explain this is how we're currently operating. Which house would you be most comfortable in? And then we find them a space within the house that's either identified as male or female. But again, it's a very complex discussion to have. So we have a committee of our board, along with residents and staff, that are looking at this issue to see how can we as an organization, move that forward. And that right now is our biggest challenge in DEI.
That's fantastic. And I just can only imagine, you said you've been 1955. So at some point they probably had to go through this conversation dealing with race, ethnicity, and then now we're looking at the binary, trans, like very, very interesting.
Well, and what's also very interesting is that now having this conversation is a really interesting point for our organization, because the first Black woman who resided in Southern Scholarship Foundation in the late 60s is now our board chair.
Oh, wow.
So she lived through exactly that when the foundation began welcoming in people that were not white to live in the houses, and now she's overseeing this other transition. So it's really an interesting dynamic and makes for great discussions.
No kidding, Shawn. And can you elaborate a little bit more about that? So how has she been able to use her experience to be able to help the committee or the board supporters be able to understand that transition and that need in policy? What stories has she been able to share with you that has brought that experience?
Well, I don't want to speak on her behalf, certainly, but she has shared that it was not comfortable. She was in the foundation only for a year because she did not feel welcome in the houses. But, and she has moved beyond that, and her personal experience, certainly a strong advocate for our mission. But she has used that as sort of her basis for the position that she's, the discussions that she's fostering, because we want everybody to feel welcome within our houses with what they bring in as themselves. And so really she's trying to help us, I think, get to the point and figure out what does that look like on the ground level.
I think that's incredible to be able to have that history and that experience to bring to the table to prevent maybe some of the errors that may have happened before while she was transitioning into this new environment. She's able to bring that experience. So what a great value to the organization. That's great. Yeah. What a great story. Well, I'm curious, Shawn, as to what advice you would have to another organization that is looking to bring diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of the culture of their organization. What advice could you possibly provide to them that would be helpful?
I go back to what I learned when I was doing my doctoral work. So, looking around and thinking, okay, so who's not here? Who's not represented here? And why are they not represented here? And trying to figure out what is at the core of that. And I think if you can figure out the why, then you can figure out the how to broaden that reach. And a lot of nonprofits, a lot of organizations are built on personal relationships. So, it's also looking at your personal networks. Who would support the mission? I can say that I really enjoy working with college students. I really want to focus on seeing people succeed. If I were offered a position at an animal shelter, I would have zero passion for that. I'm just not an animal person. But so it's diversity, but it's also the passion for the mission that needs to be part of that discussion. So identifying who's not here, but who could be here, that also can really advocate for the mission that we have as an organization.
Have you discovered over a period of time maybe some surprise areas or surprise opportunities to pull a different group into the mission of Southern Scholarship Foundation? Like maybe, I don't know, you said, I'm going to venture off into a sustainable event. And before you know it, you have someone who is completely sold out on Southern Scholarship Foundation, whereas traditionally they may have been stuck in, another mission. Or have you found any surprises along the way since?
Well, right on that point. So when I started here, Sustainable Tallahassee and Southern Scholarship Foundation had a partnership that was just being implemented. And there were several parts of that. One was replacing all the light bulbs with LED light bulbs inside and outside of the houses. And Sustainable Tallahassee helped with some grant funding on that. It was also changing our old electric water heaters to tankless water heaters and gas-powered tankless water heaters. So we had to put gas pipes into all the houses, but Sustainable Tallahassee helped us with that. So that was an interesting partnership that, you know, that I walked into. But out of that, Jim Davis, who was the executive director of Sustainable Tallahassee at the time, is now our board chair-elect.
I love how that works out.
But I mean, it is interesting because, you know, one of the things that I've noticed, and I haven't been successful in really following up with this and making the right connections yet, but I've noticed that within the students that we serve, there's a large number of students of Haitian descent. And so, you know, I've been trying to identify the inroads around the state to talk with people who may be influential and say, you know, we have a lot of Haitian students who are receiving their education in part through the scholarships that we offer and the housing that we offer, and try and bring them in, but I haven't found the right points yet. So, you know, so I think there's different ways that certainly we can, as an organization, look forward and continue to innovate in who we bring in as supporters for our mission.
Well, that's fantastic, Shawn. And I love how you had given the advice earlier too. It's just about looking around and who's not present, and maybe who's present, but in a different light that's not being represented in a bigger position, like Haitian students, and possibly where do you have, you know, Haitian representation on your board? Or I think that's fantastic. And thank you for that advice. I am curious, I've asked everyone this question now that we're starting to see people a little bit more in person, but I'm curious as to what has Shawn learned about himself in the midst of this 18-month, year and a half, I've lost track of the time, pandemic. What would you say you've learned about yourself?
I think I certainly renewed the appreciation for resiliency, and just being able to use the resources at hand. So, you know, way back in my history, when I graduated from college with my bachelor's, I joined the Peace Corps, and this was in a day, and I served in Kenya. But this was in the day where, you know, if I wanted to communicate with someone in the United States, it was a letter that took 2 weeks to reach and 2 weeks for the reply to reach me. But I didn't have a lot of resources. You know, certainly technology was, I literally sent telegrams to communicate with people in Kenya, the other volunteers. So, but looking around, but that didn't make the experience any less. And in fact, it probably made it richer. Looking around at the resources we have and being able to say, you know what, we're going to get through this. We're going to find a way and we're going to thrive. So, you know, I think it just sort of refreshed that, yeah, I can do this. And you know, and what I learned in being able to navigate through the pandemic is just, you know, rely on the resources you have. And that's the people you have, the knowledge you have, and certainly the financial opportunities in support of the mission.
What a great transition, though, from what you've learned in living and working in Kenya and bringing that during this time of need of having to step up to a crisis and be resilient. So that's awesome. Well, so I want to take this opportunity to also say thank you so much for serving on the NE's Member Advisory Council and committing that time. It's very much appreciated, your expertise and your passion for the nonprofit sector. It's definitely evident in your service. So thank you so much again for serving as a guest in the Blue Sea, but also serving on the NE's IMEC as well. We really appreciate the knowledge and the time. And I really thank you for sharing and being so transparent on this subject. Again, ensuring diversity in your organization. And special shout out to Florida Blue for their sponsorship and support of the Blue Sea. Thanks again, Shawn.
Thank you. And thank you for that, all you do for NE and for the nonprofits in our community. I certainly appreciate it.
Oh, you are welcome. My pleasure. It's an honor.
Thank you, Felina.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.